Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Honda dealers are calling on the automaker to end its partnership with Sony, calling the Afeela electric vehicle an albatross. General Motors is still evaluating plug-in hybrids for the U.S. market, though CEO Mary Barra says EVs remain the long-term focus. And U.S. new vehicle inventory holds steady to end 2025. Plus, PwC's U.S. automotive industry leader CJ Finn talks about separating hype from reality at CES.
That will be a very interesting play over the next 3 or 4 years. Who are the right partners to otherwise decide to engage with?
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Honda dealers are calling on the automaker to end its partnership with Sony. The joint venture's Afeela electric vehicle is set to start deliveries in California later this year at over $90,000. It bypasses franchised dealerships entirely through a direct sales model. Bill Feinstein is chairman of Honda's Dealer Advisory Board. He calls the venture an albatross, urging Honda to cut losses before it drains more resources. The California New Car Dealers Association has sued, claiming the strategy violates state franchise laws. Dealers' frustration intensified after Honda's U.S. sales grew just 0.5% last year. They say every dollar spent on Afeela is one not invested in core Honda and Acura products. General Motors is still evaluating plug-in hybrids for the U.S. market, though CEO Mary Barra says electric vehicles remain the company's long-term focus. Speaking at the Automotive Press Association, Barra confirmed GM plans to offer some plug-in hybrids previously targeted for 2027, but did not specify which vehicles or segments would get the technology.
We are evaluating plug-in hybrids. We have plans to do some as that we've announced in the past. The other thing that's, I think, a really great question when you look at what will the regulatory environment be beyond 28. In the past, plug-ins were the only hybrids that actually counted toward the regulatory perspective.
Plug-in hybrids made up just 1.8% of the market last year, compared to 8.1% for full EVs. And U.S. new vehicle inventory dropped to 2.92 million units in December, representing a 71-day supply. That's down from the prior month and holding near the 3 million mark the industry has maintained for nearly 2 years, and well below the 4 million that was typical before the pandemic. Among specific segments, EVs had the highest supply at 119 days, down from 126 the previous month. Sedans were leanest at 60 days. Toyota continues leading the pack with the tightest inventory at just 26 days. Joining me now to talk more about it is our own Larry Velaquette, who wrote the story for us at Automotive News. Larry, thanks for joining me again on Daily Drive.
Cal, it's always great to be here.
All right, Larry Legend. So inventory has been hovering around 3 million for nearly 2 years now. What's driving this discipline, and what do you expect it to hold through 2026?
So what's going on, I think, is that when we came out of the pandemic, automakers and dealers both realized that if they held their inventories into a more manageable level, they wouldn't be paying floor plan expenses, especially with interest rates up. It really makes the entire operation of this industry on the retail level more profitable for everybody. So I'd like to think that you're seeing that discipline kind of spread across the industry. That if you remember during the pandemic, everybody was saying, oh, we figured it out. This is the way to do it. Now it's gone up about 1 million units from where it was during the pandemic. But I think we found this level place where everybody can make where we can maximize profitability both for automakers and for their retailers.
Now, EV inventory is sitting at 119 days compared to just 57 for hybrids. What does that gap tell us about where consumer demand actually is right now?
It tells us a couple things. It tells us that the sales rate for EVs has declined precipitously because automakers are not putting a whole lot more EVs into or onto dealer lots right now. By the same token, that they are pushing hybrids and that those hybrids remain in demand. So I think what you're seeing is a reflection of a rebalancing of inventory levels at the dealership level to better match consumer demand. Those day supply numbers, while they're tricky, they're a reflection of what the sell rate is in that given month. When the sales rate for, say, EVs in this instance drops down, it's not that automakers have dumped a bunch more EVs on dealer lots. It's just that they're selling slower, and that means higher carrying costs for dealers. So you're going to see those numbers kind of slowly move down. It's not because automakers are pushing more onto the lots or their sales are picking up. It's just a reflection of the sales rate.
Perfect. Larry, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kel. Always great to be here.
You can read Larry Veliquette's reporting and find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Coming up next, PwC's U.S. automotive industry leader, CJ Finn, discusses what he saw at CES last week, including how to separate hype from reality when it comes to AI and autonomous driving. That's next on Daily Drive.
If you're an automotive supplier and you know your team is building the next big thing, prove it on the industry's biggest innovation stage. Automotive News is now accepting applications for the 2026 PACE program. PACE Awards recognize traditional and non-traditional suppliers worldwide for new product, process, and business model innovation, and entries must be innovations already commercialized through a sale to an automaker. Still pre-commercial but past the pilot stage? PACE Pilot recognizes post-pilot, pre-commercial innovations across automotive and future mobility, products, software, IT systems, and processes with the potential to revolutionize an automaker's business. All submissions are reviewed by an independent panel of judges, and MEMA is the exclusive lead sponsor. Ready to be recognized? Apply by February 9th at autonews.com.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. CES 2026 was dominated by AI announcements and demonstrations, but separating genuine innovation from overhyped promises remains a challenge for automakers shopping for technology partners. CJ Finn is PwC's U.S. automotive industry leader. He spoke with Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer on the CES show floor about what automakers are prioritizing, how to identify real technology versus hype, and whether Ford and GM's eyes-off driving promises for 2028 are achievable.
CJ Finn, welcome to Daily Drive.
I appreciate you having me. The venue's great.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, you've been to this show many times. You have a lot of insights into what's going on here on the floor. Give us your overall impressions of CES 2026.
It continues to be heavy technology focused in auto. And this continues to seem to be more and more dominated by mobility and what's happening in vehicle. And so that continues to be a key trend that we've seen automotive kind of taking over CES in many ways. A couple of things associated with that is last year, I think I was with the podcast and we talked about how software-defined vehicles was the buzzword of the event. And this year it's definitely AI. Mm-hmm. Pretty much 85 to 90% of the presentations and the interactions have AI in the title or as the buzzword that's key in the initiative. As you look at that taking over is also an indication of where the excitement is from an investment dollar perspective for our clients and where the greatest opportunity is. I think in that the opportunity still is yet to be achieved in many situations, and we're still scratching the surface on the investments there. Is the tangible output coming?
What do you attribute to that? Obviously, we've seen a pullback in things like electric vehicle tech and things like that, which makes a lot of sense because of policy changes and so forth. But what is there more to it, I guess?
I think if you look at where the automotive industry is spending the incremental capital, and so the stuff that's above and beyond just the typical get the vehicles out, do a new launch, engage. The OEMs in particular are focusing in on three areas. One is powertrain with electric, and that show's kind of evolved. People have figured out who their partnerships and how they're approaching it. I think that's still coming, but that's kind of lost some of the excitement. The second area is the interaction with the consumer. And so the in-vehicle technology, and that's very much AI driven to make sure the user experience and engagement is there. And then the third is autonomous. And what you see at the show, but also you see in the industry, is no individual company has the capabilities in-house or the capital to be able to go attack all three areas by themselves. And so those companies are looking for the right strategic partners, are looking to figure out where do they have the right to win, and then where do they need the assistance. And I think some of the showcases here at CES are, you're starting to see how the different players are defining their niche and where they have the right to win, and also highlighting some of the strategic partnerships that are becoming present in auto.
So you said that it continues to be very much a lot of auto focus here. At the same time, it feels like we're not seeing as many automakers with big displays and things like that. It feels, at least from my perspective, like there's less of an auto presence here. How do you square that?
Well, a couple things. One is, while the big reveals or the other activities minimal compared to what we've seen at either the auto shows of years past or even CES in years past, the automakers and the suppliers are all here. I think there's a level of engagement and interaction that's happening in a B2B forum and an engagement, but they don't necessarily have that big consumer display.
Is it fair to say they're doing more shopping than selling?
They're doing more shopping than selling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good tag associated with what you see. And they're educating themselves in terms of the pace of change and the technology innovations. Everybody's looking to figure out, like, where are other people playing, and what are those niches that they have a definitive need, and where are some of the solutions that are available, and also, like, where are our competitors playing, and where do we need to catch up.
So putting yourself in the shoes of an automaker shopping here, of course, everyone's going to be trying to put on a big show for their technology, and there's always hype here. How do you separate the hype from the what's real? In
order to do that, you got to go more than 3 questions deep with some of the people who are presenting and really get into understanding the technology and the funding of where their funding's coming from. How big of a play are they making? If it's a niche, you're looking at an R&D spend, and the funding doesn't necessarily matter. If they're the larger players, it's the cost to get to where we need to get to across the powertrain, autonomous, and customer experience. Significant investment spend, and so you want to make sure that you have a well-funded partner, and so that's a matter of doing the research. In terms of the engagement and the interactions of the individual booths, it is fun to see, like, over 1,000 startups here and where they're solving their individual niche. Sometimes that's an age activity, that there's something unique from a technology perspective to handle an age item or a disability or some other unique characterization amongst the consumer base, and the technology to go try and solve or help the OEMs or suppliers attack that market. And then you have the very broader players, and something that is very inclusive of auto but beyond auto is you have a number of the large players that have a fight for the different ecosystems, where they want to control the user and consumer engagement at the home, in the car, and at work. And seeing the strategies associated with those larger players has also been pretty interesting at the show.
Can you give me some examples of things that you might see that fall under the hype category, and others that fall under the, well, there's a real future for this?
I think if I stay to autonomous, the pace of change of getting to AI to where we're getting to where it's 99% safe. But man, like, 99% is not 99.999 or 100%. So while it still may be safer than a consumer in many situations, like, solving that last 1% is really hard and really expensive. I think there's slight level of hype, but seeing some of these startups working to solve those niches of, like, the almost infinite number of user cases, but a predefined level of user cases that are on the edge of activity, I think that's real, and you're going to start seeing some substantive improvements of us going from level 2+ to level 4 in a shorter time horizon. And I think a year or two ago, there was are we ever going to get there? Like, are we ever going to be able to solve that? And I think the excitement I had from this show is, like, there's enough brain power going after it. I think there's reality on what AI can do there.
So it sort of falls in both buckets in that case.
It does.
Which makes it even more complicated to figure out, right?
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And unfortunately, like, you're right. Like, people's natural indication is everything's really, really exciting, but you don't realize it's hype until it's too late and you've gone too far down the path.
We talk so much about how hard it is to solve that last 1%. You know, on our podcast Shift, this is a through line we hear all the time is it's just really hard. One thing maybe we don't talk about is how expensive it is. I'm curious, you know, especially considering how many people are working on specific parts of that problem. Is that a huge barrier in, you know, I guess how many people do you need to get in your supply chain or your, you know, partnership wagon to get that solved?
The challenge is you need the right handful, but it's got to be the right handful. And as an OEM, you've got two choices. And from when it comes to autonomous, either you truly believe that autonomous will substantively, level 4, will substantively change the game, where the market then looks like there's only a handful of players and it looks more like the cell phone market, at which point in time you're all in with any incremental excess capital because the stakes are just so high. Automotive hasn't historically been like that. Automotive has been much more of a fast follower type activity, and everybody's we can have dozens of players all with between 3 and 15%, 20% market share in a particular area. And sometimes that true innovation was just too expensive and it was much cheaper to be the fast follower. If you believe in that second bucket, you're not going all in on autonomous and you're more focused in on that user experience and the user engagement. I think that will be a very interesting play over the next 3 or 4 years. Who are the right partners to otherwise decide to engage with? You have to choose some of the bigger players, and then you have to recognize where those limitations are and then start spending R&D money to help solve some of those niches.
I got to ask you about the biggest auto news that we've heard so far here at CES, at least in my estimation. It's from an automaker that doesn't have a booth here, Ford, saying yesterday that they are going to be offering hands-off, eyes-off driving. And then this is following GM saying that I believe by 2028 they're going to be offering a similar thing. You know, what's your reaction to that, and is it achievable?
I think it's achievable, but I'll recognize that there's also a podcast out there from me about 10 years ago when my daughter was 4. She's now 14 and a half. And I made the statement of like, yes, it's real. And my daughter will never have to learn how to drive. And that's been played back to me across a number of automotive executives. And she starts driver's ed in 4 months.
Oh,
and
no.
yes, she will learn how to drive. And compared to some of her peer group, she's looking forward to it immensely. No different than I did. Mm-hmm. That race, though, on an overall basis across the industry, to get to that eyes off, hands off mood, it's what technology in the vehicle do you need? Is there adaptability to that, the hardware that you have, so that as we continue to make improvements, you're able to iterate that vehicle? Crucial. Also, like, that's the key, because that's where the productivity improvements change for the consumer and what they're then going to be willing to pay for. Like, well, I'm not necessarily the average consumer, given the number of vehicles compared to drivers that I have in my house, where I have 5 vehicles for 2 drivers. I'm very vested, and I'm not so sure I'm willing to pay for electric versus ICE. But for me not to have to worry about putting my hands on the vehicle and being able to go do other things while in the vehicle as a mode of transportation, or my 2 kids not driving yet, being able to have them be driven around and not have to worry about it. And so I'm not the Uber driver anymore. I'm willing to pay an extreme premium for that, because that gives me time back in my day. And so from a strategy perspective and the announcements that are coming out, you got to set the milestones, and that's the fight for the consumer, because that's what people are going to be willing to pay for.
I've been so engaged in this conversation, I sort of left maybe one of the best pieces of this for last. PwC just released your industry outlook study. Give us the overview, talk about what it found.
Yeah, so from an outlook perspective, we've highlighted a number of those activities. where the investment dollars are going. And so those investment dollars, reiterating powertrain, customer experience, and autonomous, and acknowledging that you need the partnerships to otherwise engage. We also talk about, like, at some point in time, from a spend perspective to the corresponding return, consolidation is going to need to take place. Is that 26? Probably not, but not too far away compared to 26 is where I'd anticipate seeing a level of consolidation. The last item that we highlighted in the survey, but also we see here on display, is investment in both supply chain, making sure we have supply chain stability, and then relooking at the productivity on the shop floor. And how do you accelerate design time and also increase efficiency in manufacturing? So those back office activities. And robotics has been on display here. And I think it's still early stages of their hype machine. But I think robotics right now is the manifestation of AI coming into hardware on the shop floor, that the humanoids gather all the headlines and the attention, but there's a lot of work that's being done with things that don't look humanoid but still qualify as robotics. True productivity is occurring on a daily basis there, and I think you're going to see a fair bit of investment in increased productivity on the manufacturing side.
I guess in the taking this full circle, going back to the hype versus reality question with humanoid robots, that's been getting so much attention, partially, I think, because it's the most visually interesting thing here at CES.
It's pretty cool to look
Yeah,
at, right?
it
And I think several have said, like, it's really hard to visualize what is AI because a lot of that is software. Well, with the robots, you kind of see that kind of come to life. Hype versus reality. Man, the humanoid robots capture a lot of hype right now. I think there's a lot of reality there. It's just probably a little bit further away. In terms of hype cycle, I think we're still early days on the robotic hype cycle.
Got it. CJ Finn is PwC's U.S. auto leader. CJ, it was such a great opportunity to talk to you here today. Thanks so much.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, everybody.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to our own Urvash Kakaria, Lindsay Van Hully, and Larry Velaquette for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on tech and innovation, retail, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a look at a new poll on political attitudes toward EVs, which might be softening to begin 2026. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.